This is Algebra 1, Lesson 29, and this lesson is over negative exponents. So if we have a negative exponent like 3 to the negative squared, to get rid of this negative sign, all we have to do is move this to the other side of our fraction. Now you might say, well, that's not a fraction. Well, this really means over 1. So if we move this entire thing down to the bottom of the fraction, then we are going to get rid of that negative exponent. So that would end up being 1 over 3 squared. We take the negative away. So you can move a base and its exponent to the other side of the fraction, up or down, if you change the sign of the exponent. Okay, 3 squared would be 9, so the answer to that would be 1 over 9. Okay, let me do another one to show you. All right, 1 over 3 to the negative third. Okay, to get rid of this negative, we have to move the base and the exponent to the top of the fraction. So we're going to say 3 to the negative 3 over 1. We just moved it up to the top. We don't need the over 1 now, because over 1 doesn't mean anything. 3 to the negative 3 would be, oh wait, it got rid of that negative. Yes, when we moved it to the top, it's just 3 to the third. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. That's the answer to that one. So when you move it to the top of the fraction, it gets rid of your negative sign. If you move it to the bottom of the fraction, it'll get rid of your negative sign. All right, this is 29.3. So this says negative 3 negative squared. Okay, to get rid of that, this really means over 1. We're going to move this to the bottom of the fraction. So we're going to put our 1 on top, and then our negative 3, keep that in parentheses, and then our 2. And it's not negative 2 anymore because we moved it to the other side of the fraction. Negative 3 squared would be negative 3 times negative 3. Remember, I can't cover that, so I have to include it. 3 times 3 is 9, and that would be positive 9, so 1 over 9 is that one. Okay, so anytime you have a negative exponent, you just move the exponent and the base to the other side of the fraction. All right, when multiplying, if the bases are the same, you can add the exponent. So if you have x to the 4th times x squared, what does that really mean? Okay, so x to the 4th means we have 1, 2, 3, 4 x's that we're multiplying, and then we're multiplying that times 2 x's, that'd be x, x. We really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 x's, so that would be x to the 6th. So all we did was add 4 plus 2 to get 6. So when the bases are the same, this has to be an x and this has to be an x, then and you're multiplying, you just add your exponents. Okay. So here are some examples. So we've got x to the 4th, m squared, x to the negative 2, m to the negative 5th. Okay. So all we have to do is add the exponents on the ones that the bases are the same. So which ones of these have bases that are the same? We've got x's. So that means that this is x to the 4th minus 2. Okay, so we've got our 4th and we've got our minus 2. And then our m's, we have m squared minus 5. That means that our exponent for our x is 4 minus 2, which would be 2. And then here we have 2 minus 5, which would be negative 3. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to look at that. So let's say that we had x to the 4th, right, and m squared. Now what if we put this one on the bottom of our fraction? So we just move that down. And then we'd have x squared at the bottom and m to the 5th at the bottom. Okay, so what does this really mean? This really means we have 4 x's on the top that are all being multiplied times each other and 2 m's. Okay, here we have 2 x's and 5 m's. Okay, now if we look at these, we know that x over x, that means x divided by x, those can cancel each other. So we can cancel here and here, and then we can cancel some of these m's, and we are left with 2 x's on the top and 3 m's on the bottom. And if we move this up to the top, just change the sign, and we will get x squared m to the negative 3. So that's another way of looking at the same kind of problem. All right. So let's try 29.5 has x squared, y to the negative 6, y to the 5th, x to the 4th, z, x, z to the 5th. So the first thing I want you to do when you have a problem like this is go over here and put a 1 next to any that don't have an exponent showing, because that just means you're multiplying z times itself one time. You only have one z that's being multiplied, but that's going to help you. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find all my x's. This one is squared, and then over here we've got positive 4, and over here we got positive 1. Okay. Then I'm going to find all my y's. Over here we have negative 6. Here we have plus 5. And that's it for the y's. And then I'm going to find all of my z's. 1 and 5. Okay, now I'm just going to add all this together. So for my x's, I have 2 plus 4, which is 6, plus 1 is 7. So I have x to the 7th. For my y's, I have negative 6, positive 5. I owe $6. I pay back 5 of it. I still owe $1, so negative 1. And then for my z's, I have 1 plus 5, so that would be 6. So that's the answer right there. So all you're doing is you're putting those together. You're just adding the exponents on like bases. So remember, this is the base. That's the exponent. The bases have to be the same, and then you just add the exponent. Okay, let's try another one. All right, let's try 29.6. This one has an a and a b. So a is x squared, y to the 5th, y to the negative 2, x to the negative 2. Okay, so I just got to find all my x's and add up their exponents. So here's an x, and here's an x. So I'm going to say 2 minus 2. Well, 2 minus 2 is 0, so that really means x to the 0, and x to the 0 means 1. Okay, so anything with a 0 exponent is going to equal 1. So if I had 5 to the 0, that equals 1. Okay, anything with a 0 exponent equals 1. So we have 1, we just have 1, the number 1. All right, right here we have 5 minus 2, which would be y to the 3rd. And we really can just write this as y to the 3rd. We don't need that one right there. Because basically this positive 2 and this negative 2 canceled each other out. We don't have any more y's. Okay. Let's try the b part of 29.6. Okay, and it says m to the 5th, b squared, m, b to the negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to look for my m's first. Right here I have m to the 5th, and this one's going to really be m to the 1. Okay, so I have 5 plus 1 more would be m to the 6th. All right, here I have plus 2, and here I have minus 2. These are just going to cancel each other out, and we don't have anything for b left. So the answer is just m to the 6th. Let's do 29.7. X to the 5th, y to the 0, z times p to the negative 3, z to the 0, minus 4x to the negative 5, z to the negative 1. Alright, before I try to do anything, I'm going to simplify by getting rid of all of my to the zeros. So I'm going to copy this down. I've got x to the 5th, y to the 0. I can take that out. It just means times 1. Then I'm going to bring down my z. Then I'm going to put my parentheses. I got p to the negative 3, z to the 0, get rid of that, minus 4x to the negative 5, z to the negative 1. Okay, now for this one I'm going to need to rainbow. So I'm going to multiply every term, every exponent here, times every one there. So that's our first one. I don't have any other x's, no z's, no like bases. So I'm just going to write each of these. So I got x to the 5th, z, and then p to the negative 3rd. None of the bases were the same, so I couldn't add any exponents. When I come over here, I've got my negative 4, then x to the 5th minus x to the 5th. So I got x to the positive 5th and x to the negative 5th. So these two are going to cancel each other out. So I don't have any x's when I multiply right here. This one, I have z to the 1 and z to the negative 1. Those also cancel each other out. So I don't have any z's. So that is all I have left. And that's the answer to that one. Okay, so be careful on the ones that cancel each other out. Alright, this next one, 29.8. X to the negative 2, y to the negative 2, times x squared, y squared, plus 4x to the 4th, y squared. Okay, so on this one, I don't have any zeros that I can get rid of, but I can multiply from here to here. So I'm going to put my x's together. Negative 2 and positive 2 are going to cancel each other, so I don't have any x's for this one. Negative 2 and positive 2 cancel each other again, so really that would mean 1 times 1, which is just 1. So the whole answer to that part, when I multiplied here times here, would just be 1. Okay, now I'm going to go this way, and I've got positive 4. X's, we're going to put those together. We've got negative 2, positive 4, that's 4 minus 2, which would be x squared. And here I've got positive 2, negative 2, those cancel each other out, so nothing on that one. And that's the answer. 1 plus x, 4x squared. Okay, 29.9. 2 to the 0, and it's easy, that just equals 1. Negative 2 to the 0. Now, this has no parentheses, so I can cover that up. So I'm going to say 2 to the 0 is 1, then I have to bring down my negative. So that one is negative 1. Alright, this one is negative 2 to the 0. That negative 2 is included, that negative is included in there, so that one's going to equal 1. We zeroed it out when we went to the 0 power. Okay? So if the negative is inside the parentheses, then it's just going to equal 1. If it's not inside parentheses, then we've got 1, and then we've got to bring down our negative. Okay? Alright, go ahead and pause the video and try these practice problems, and then I will work on them. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and did the practice problems. First one is 1 over 2 to the negative 3rd. Okay, so to get rid of this negative, we're going to move the whole thing, the base and the exponent, to the top of the fraction. So that would be 2 to the 3rd over 1, but we don't have to write the over 1. So we've just got 2 to the 3rd, which will be 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So the answer to A is 8. B, negative 4, negative squared. Okay, so to get rid of this negative, that's the first thing we have to do. We're going to move that to the bottom of the fraction. So we're going to do 1 over negative 4 squared. Alright, we can't cover that up. So we have to include that. That means negative 4 times negative 4, which would be negative times a negative is a positive 16. So this equals 1 over 16. Okay, that was B. C. 1 over negative 3 negative squared. All right, to get rid of this negative, I have to move it to the top of the fraction. So I'm going to have negative 3 squared. We don't have our negative anymore. That would basically be over 1, which means that we can't cover that up. So it would be negative 3 times negative 3, which would be positive 9. So the answer to that one is 9. D is 8 to the 0. That's just going to equal 1. Anything to the 0 equals 1. E, negative 8 to the 0. That's going to equal negative 1 because we know 8 to the 0 equals 1, and then we have to put our negative on after that. So it's negative 1. F, negative 3 to the 0. This one means everything inside this parentheses has to be to the 0, which is just 1. Okay? All right, G is P plus M plus K squared to the 0 power. That whole thing we're doing to the 0, that's going to make it equal 1. So that whole thing equals 1. All right, H. We have x to the negative 3, y to the negative 8, y to the 5th, x to the 4th, z, x squared, z to the 5th. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is put a 1 next to my z right there. Alright, now I'm going to look for all of my x's. I've got negative 3, I've got 4, and I've got 2. 4 and 2 would be 6, minus 3 would be 3. So x to the 3rd, because I had negative 3, positive 4, positive 2. These two would make 6 minus 3 equals 3. Alright, so that's it for my x's. I could go ahead and cross those out. I use those. Now I'm going to do my y's. I've got y to the negative 8 and y to the 5th. So I've got negative 8 and 5. And that would be y to the negative 3. I owe $8. I pay back 5 of it. I still owe 3. Alright, and then all I have left are these z's. I've got z to the 1 here and z to the 5th. So that's going to equal 1 plus 5 is 6. So I have z to the 6th. Alright, so that's the answer for that one. I, this one had a lot of practice problems. X to the 6th, y to the negative 3, x squared, y to the 3rd. Okay, on this one, do my x's first. So I got x to the 6th there, x squared right there. So that would really be 6 plus 2, which would be 8. So I've got x to the 8. And then here I have y to the negative 3 and y to the positive 3, which would really mean negative 3 plus 3, which equals 0. Y to the 0 would just be 1. So basically those just canceled each other out, and we're left with x to the 8th. So that's the answer to that one. And the last one, J, I'm going to erase these so we have more room. J is 2x squared, whoops, that's negative squared, y to the 3rd times x squared y minus 3x to the negative 1, y to the negative 3. Okay, so remember, we're multiplying this first term times these two terms. So right here we're multiplying that times that. That's our first rainbow. So really we have 2 times the implied 1, so that's just going to be 2. And then we're doing x squared, x negative squared, x squared. So we got x to the negative 2 times x 2. So that's going to be negative 2 plus 2, which is going to equal 0. That means we don't have any x's on this first one. All right, for the y's, we have y to the third, y to the 1. So we're going to have y to the third times y to the 1. That means we just add 3 plus 1 equals 4. So we've got y to the fourth. All right, that was our first part of our rainbow there. Now I have to rainbow the next part. So we're going to multiply this times this part. Okay, so first we've got this 2 times negative 3. 2 times 3 is 6. That would be negative 6. So always make sure that if you have numbers, you're multiplying those numbers when you rainbow. All right, here we got x to the negative 2, x to the negative 1. So x to the negative 2, x to the negative 1. That would be negative 2 minus 1, which would equal negative 3. So that's x to the negative 3, that part. And then for our y's, we have y to the third right there, and then we have y to the negative 3. Okay, so that means 3 minus 3, which would equal 0. So that means that we don't have any y's on this term. So that's the answer, 2y to the fourth minus 6x to the third, negative third. Okay, so if you have any problems with any of these, just leave them blank and I'll work them on the board when we get to class on Wednesday. All right, that's the homework. Thanks, bye.